Hey everyone, greetings in Jesus' name. It's been a while since I've talked about AI on my page, and I know some of you have had questions relating to AI and have even sent me articles and things that you're thinking about, and I wanted to just make a video that's sort of a general video. It's going to be a little longer that kind of consolidates some of the emerging trends in the technology. I see a lot of people talking about sort of the normal talking points, and this is not going to be one of those videos. We're going to be looking at the next gen technologies and some of the upcoming use cases for technology and why we should understand them or what we should understand about them. To give you a preview, we're going to talk about quantum markings. We're going to talk about and digital ID systems. We're going to talk about age gates, and we're going to talk about the challenge of the cameras. And then lastly, we're going to discuss AI content. So that's sort of the preview. And I just want to say that Jesus is Lord of everything. He is Lord of this day, and he's Lord of my life, and I love him so much, and I want the world to know about Jesus. And so, yeah, I've been a little bit silent on some of these issues more recently as I've given space to allow churches and ministries and even mission agencies time to grapple with their own code of ethics without trying to speak over them. They had already heard me. They are already seen what I had seen and maybe just needed some time to arrive at some of these conclusions themselves. I was just at a very encouraging meeting. The global conference of all the Bible translators met about a week ago, and we had a very good dialogue between people who are optimists and pessimists about AI and ethicists as well. And so I see that people everywhere are still trying to arrive at the best case scenario. They want to use the best parts of the technology without creating harm to others. And I applaud the Bible translation community as well as many of the other ministries that I see for the attempt at that. I think it's well-meaning and it's well-intentioned. So I want to talk about quantum markings for just a minute and digital ID systems. Now, I've already started to hear Christian podcasters and influencers kind of relating the digital ID network with the mark of the beast in Revelation chapter 13. And I think that I would see some specific problems with that hermeneutical line, namely that there's no marking attached to a digital ID system. And when we start to play a little bit loose with words like receive and with words like worships the beast, then we start to really open the door to a lot of strange and deviant hermeneutics. There's a lot of people in 2020 who were very alarmed with the notion that perhaps they received the mark of the beast when they received a vaccine. And I really think it had to do with people applying incorrect hermeneutics to key passages in the book of Revelation that we need to allow the words to stand. We need those words to stand and say what they said. We all are interpreters. We all have to eventually arrive at a place where we receive that word and think about it in terms of something actionable. But I think that the digital ID network is the groundwork for a global identification system, no doubt. But there needs to be, for it to be a biblical fulfillment of that prophecy, which I do believe God will fulfill all of his word, there needs to be a mark that people receive. Here's why I think it's quantum dots. Quantum dots won the Nobel Prize a couple years ago. Look it up, for the uses of that technology in displays, photovoltaics, and also, very curiously, biotech. And the biotech applications of quantum dots had a lot to do with how do you tell if somebody had received a vaccine. You could apply a network of dots to their skin or with a subdermal needle, whatever. And you could know very clearly if somebody had received a certain treatment. That seems to be like a version 1.0 of an advanced marking tool that there's already scanners for. Okay, there's already scanners for, meaning we have the infrastructure in place because of digital IDs and the AI 2.0 layer, which is what we currently have, the silicon AI layer. But we are moving quickly towards the quantum AI layer, where things will not transact and things will not take place if we do not have things encrypted on that quantum layer. So the AI-based silicon layer that we're currently on gets you in the door at the airport. It gets you through security. It gets you through customs. And there's a lot of things that they're already using facial ID for in terms of just being able to verify that you are who you say you are. Now, that's not so strange, maybe. We already see the application of the tech being, hey, we're going to tell you who you are, or we're going to verify who you are. And the infrastructure that's there involves expensive scanners, expensive cameras, and lots of other electronic gate technologies for moving people in and out of secure areas. But I think when we look at the need for the future, it's a 100% accurate system. Some of these systems aren't accurate even among themselves. I walked through the same airport twice. One time it approved my scan of my picture, and the other time it didn't. It couldn't match me because of the way I had my facial hair or the way I styled my hair or whatever, the angle of my face or something. So these technologies are improving, but they're not at the perfect state yet. Why I think this matters is that quantum dots have the potential to add a veracity to people's personhood that is like 100%. If you embed quantum dots beneath the skin and then fluoresce certain lights upon the skin, different patterns from those dots will emerge. And a very simple number of dots could actually give a computer all of the information it needs if you sequence the colors and the spacing of those dots, much like you would a QR code. So if there's 8 billion people on the planet, presumably there's more than 8 billion sequences available of quantum dot markings. And that's where I think the technology is going. And I would really encourage people to be careful about their use of the Bible specifically, to whenever they're making a case for their eschatology, that they would not widen the intended use of those words. And so I would just be careful with that. Some of these hermeneutics I'm seeing are, it's almost like they don't intend to see God fulfill his word, or that his prophecies would be fulfilled that are 2,000 years old. And so they want to kind of change things. But I do see worship, and I do see receives. And both of those are in an active tense, interestingly enough, in the book of Revelation, giving sort of a ongoing understanding of somebody's participation within the beast system. It's an ongoing, continuous participation, and not something I think that somebody accidentally does. In fact, I think when I see the state of the world and I see the state of people's disbelief in the Bible, I think that it will take the world by surprise to some extent, but there will be quite a bit of Christian voice. I think that the Christian voice and testimony will not stay silent at a time like a global marking system is unveiled and demonstrated. I don't think that we would be silent at a time like that. And so the real question for every single person is, it's really a test. Did someone believe the word of God? Did someone believe that it was the truth of God, or did they think it was something else? I think that is the test that comes here to us at the end of history. People can give all kinds of lip service to whether or not they claim to be a believer, but did they believe and obey the word of God? And that is a question that will come at a high price for believers. So that's what I think. I think we need to be careful. I think the future does hold a marking system that gives somebody access to the economy. The Bible says that. And I do believe that this system has to be above, one layer above the current silicon AI layer, which is why I've said for a long time I believe it will be on the quantum compute layer. And so this computer system to rule them all, I think will emerge, and it will have its own token of verification. On the silicon AI layer, you can use things like two-factor authentication and phone calls and send a text message type of stuff. But once you get to the ultra encrypted layers, it has to be a negotiation only between a person and that computer system. I know that sounds really complicated. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. Basically, every single time you enter a password, it's you making an agreement with that computer that you are the person you say you are. So passwords kind of got hacked, and then we started introducing two-factor authentication, or your phone gets a text or something. That's basically still the same handshake between you and that computer. They're just adding one extra password to make sure that you're really who you are. But once you get to advanced computing systems that are operating with quantum mechanics, the types of verification tools that it is looking for are probably optical. They're probably not electronic. I would guess that they're probably prismatic, optical, or something to do with quantum dots. So keep a close eye on that technology as it unfolds, especially as it relates to economic use cases. There's already banks that are using quantum verification for fintech, and they're leading the charge. The banks will get technology typically before human or people like you and me do. And humans and businesses, businesses often do get the cool technology before the rest of humanity. So just be watching. That's what I would encourage you. Okay, second one. I want to talk about age gating. Gating GPT. There was an article that came out that talked about the potential restriction of GPT tools to people over a certain age. There's also, within the last week, been some new restrictions about certain topics that AI can't discuss with you for legal reasons. I think it's like legal and medical, I think, are the two categories. But they're starting to kind of put some gates in place so that it's not the Wild West. You can't have people getting on there and asking questions that they really have no business asking. And there's already been some cases of arrests taking place because of people who have asked questions in GPT that they really shouldn't have asked. Okay, so it's a little bit like a Google search that way. And Google searches also have had the issue of who should be on Google and what should they be having access to on that platform. It's been a huge issue over the last couple decades. And children having access to things that really have caused them great harm. And so technology leaders are looking at existing and new technologies and saying, how do we prevent harm from these to children? And so they're adding age verification systems into those plans. And what this is doing is it's introducing a gate system. So there are some AI systems that are still open source, but there are a growing number of them that require some kind of verification, whether it's an ID, a payment, or some kind of email handle and personhood handle so that you can use that tool, an account, maybe they would say. But if the future of work becomes dependent on AI, which I think many of us would agree that most workplaces are integrating AI at a very quick pace, and it seems like it's becoming quite ubiquitous. So if work requires it, if to some extent one's education or research requires it, then you start to look at these and then, potentially if sort of my theories about the economy are correct, if your ability to transact requires it, then the gate by which you enter and exit that system becomes kind of synonymous with your ability to be a person in the 21st century. A while back in one of my videos, I talked about how it's like the keys to the earthly kingdom. Having the mark is like the keys to the earthly kingdom, in that if you have it, you get access to everything: the economy, potentially universal basic income, potentially all the intellectual tools that you would ever need, the knowledge power of AI being on your side, and all this. So it's kind of like the keys to the earthly kingdom, to be able to unlock this gate and walk through. And right now, like, people inside that kingdom and those outside that kingdom seem like they're the same, But that all changes as soon as the gate is closed. It's probably going to happen in our lifetimes, friends. As hard as that is to accept, there will probably come a time where first it's a limited use, and then it's an exclusion of use for Christians who are having what I would say are biblical convictions, that we would potentially be restricted from using these tools. I know that's really tough, and the toughness of it will come in a gradient of difficulty in layers, okay? It will come in a gradient of difficulty in layers. So layer 1, okay, you can't do a few things and it's a mild inconvenience. Layer 2, it's a bigger inconvenience, and you really don't want to inconvenience yourself to that extent. Layer 3, potentially you have to work through someone else who is operating on those systems as your agent, or you fall behind or fail to do what you need to do. Layer 4, now it's so expected that you will have already done the things with the tool set that you now face considerable penalty and prejudice for inactivity or unwillingness to engage with those systems. Layer 5, that prejudice and pain has become so significant that only a few will offer help. And then finally, that pain is so severe that it results in the loss of life, loss of autonomy, and loss of community, and loss of just terrible things from there. So that's what I think will come if we are gated out of the identification systems. It will be very hard, but it will be a gradation of difficulty. I don't think we face the entire difficulty all at one point. I think that these types of systems will lock us out very gradually. And that's maybe good and bad at the same time. However, that being said, I do think that Christians will, to some extent, voluntarily exclude themselves. There are things about the AI system that are so poor for fellowship, love, community, friendship, that I think before we are even excluded entirely, I believe there will be a resistance movement of trying to recreate the basic fundamentals of human connection between believers. And I think that when I see this business of the people of God being sealed, of course, we believe that the Holy Spirit is what seals us for redemption. But there's this couple curious verses where the believers are wearing the name of God on their heads. And it's like in contrast to the name of the beast, right? The believers are kind of banding together this name of God, and they're wearing that as their banner, and they're not wearing their barcode for payment essentially as their banner. They're wearing the name of God as their banner. I find that to be an encouragement, because if these people had taken up that headband, they would have already decided that this other system isn't for us. They would have already decided that this other system isn't for us. And I find that to be kind of encouraging and kind of inspiring, actually, that it is possible that people would so identify the system of the world as being so deficient that they would create something better and opt for it before those gradations of pain kind of really set in. And I think that the Christians might be doing so well that it will have to be other forms of persecution that really take them down, such as land rights or communication rights or things like that. I think that it is possible that those who Go with me for a minute to Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the courts of Nebuchadnezzar and the courts of Babylon. You got this king who's feeding all the people like super delicious food, and what does Daniel and his men say? Just feed us veggies. Like, give us the veggies, and we're gonna be fine. Like, we just want veggies. And it's seen after such a short amount of time that they're so much healthier and so much wiser and so much better than these people who are munching on the junk food. And so even in that, I see an analogy. I see a profound analogy, friends. Those who are munching all day on digital junk food are so unhealthy compared to those who are spending time in the Word and in true fellowship and in prayer, and it's just like so different. Is it as tasty to spend 2 hours in prayer and fellowship? Well, it might be more like vegetables in that compared to 2 hours of Netflix, maybe it's not as dopamine producing, but it is so much healthier, so much better. And so I think that when it comes to the push and pull factors at play with the future economy systems, future systems of social networking and communication and all of that, I think it may be the case that Christians will have already started to almost detoxify themselves from those AI-based systems and construct systems that are better, actually, making kind of a graves into gardens and like a river in the wilderness and joy in the journey through the wilderness as well. So I don't know, something to think about. That's where I see it going. I think that when age gates come, and companies are trying to keep out minors, the next step is gates for people who maybe are ideologically deficient. And then when Christians are defined as ideologically deficient, boom, we don't get the tools anymore. Sorry. When our ideology says, I won't take your little quantum dot thing, there you go. And how I am so encouraged, friends. Actually, it's funny, like 2 years ago or so, almost 3 years ago, I was so discouraged by the lack of discernment I saw by and large. But bro, in the last 2 years, I have seen such a wisdom from God come upon his people as they are walking in discernment that I would say that those lacking discernment are definitely the outliers when it comes to God's people. And that is so encouraging, friends. We find that to be just really gives me a lot of hope. Okay. So age gates of all kinds will come to the digital tools, most likely the bridge point between the AI encryption layer and the quantum encryption layer. And once the first few quantum computers and quantum AI systems and super intelligences come online, then we will see a definite acceleration of the need for these types of tools. And so expect it. And yet, when you expect it, don't expect it as though it was like this impending punishment, even though it somewhat is. Expect it as though it's your opportunity to band together for the journey of a lifetime, to walk alongside other brothers and sisters in Christ and suffer alongside them and be together and be present with them. Yes, there's going to be injustice. Yes, there's going to be sadness, but I actually take a lot of comfort in that verse that says those who will go into captivity will go into captivity. Those who will die by the sword will die by the sword. And really, to some extent, our fate is predetermined. And wrestle with that one a little bit. It's actually a pretty encouraging thought when Jesus says no one by worrying can add an hour to his life. I used to be bothered by that. And the more and more I've grown, the more and more I have understood that to be such a mercy and such a gift. So anyway, there's the first couple ones. Okay, let's talk about the challenge of cameras. There's a bunch of new applications for your phone, even some that are specifically marketed to Christians that offer the ability to transcribe audio. Now, the ones marketed to Christians, it's like sermon note-taking. So you can take your phone to church, click a button, and it will transcribe the sermon. It will summarize the key points. and kind of give you this nice text summary. And if you look closely, there's people wearing necklaces these days or wearing glasses that have AI transcription on them, even bracelets. I think is it called Plod? I can't remember. But it's a way of transcribing the real-time audio around someone and then basically giving them a digital copy. I call this the challenge of cameras, because what it does is it creates this expectation in every space that it would be connected. It would be connected to the web. It would be connected to the authorities. It would be connected to the all-seeing eye of technology. And it's kind of funny that that's a almost prophetic thing in itself. Like, consider e pluribus unum, the back of the dollar, and how there's this eye. It's AI, by the way, one singular I, AI or NI, at the top of the pyramid. And it's this all-seeing eye, which represents the government, which represents, the ability of the one in power to see all things, right? And we are approaching that not from a theological perspective of God seeing all things, but from a technological or technocratic kind of perspective of the technology seeing all things. If everything is accessible to the computers and to the authorities by way of the computers, then every space is, technically speaking, a surveilled space by those in authority. And here's where I would say it presents a challenge. A church speaks every Sunday. There's a sermon every single Sunday. To what extent are the values of the church aligning with or deviating from the values of the government? It's really an important question. There's some churches that have been targeted in Canada within my lifetime for their stances on certain social issues and biblical issues. And there are pastors who have been, I believe, even put in jail for some things that they've said. In the UK, it's becoming very common to be arrested for one's social media posts. So, yeah, what you say in earshot of a computer now carries more radical consequence than it did 10 years ago. So how will our churches and our world be affected by a bunch of people transcribing sermons on their phone? Well, I can tell you for sure that this company is making its money not in the service, selling a service, they're selling the data. Just like I could just go down a list. Pokemon Go, the one from Shark Tank about the cat's DNA. Oh my goodness. All of these companies, I'm not even going to go any further, but what they're really dealing in is data. They're not dealing in product. They're dealing in data. So you get an app that says, hey, we have hundreds of churches across the United States. We have all of their sermons transcribed. We know exactly what they're talking about. Who wants to buy that data? I'm telling you that it is most certainly the enemies of that same institution. They want to know, how can we get these guys? Where can we get these guys? It's kind of actually going back to Daniel again, kind of like those people who followed him around. They wanted to know exactly when he was going to break the rules, to pray to God, right? And I think I see it coming in the future where there are so many devices constantly listening, constantly surveilling, that the ability of Christian people to live in the private space is just going to disappear. We may need to become more creative and more like China, if I can even say that, in terms of finding ways to protect certain spaces from all forms of listening. I don't like it that it's that's the way it is, but how can you even have a conversation anymore? Have you ever noticed that someone will act a little different when they know that they're being watched or recorded? I've noticed it. And yet, here we are. Like, we're coming to a time where cameras are everywhere. And they know who you are. Sure, that's one level. But these systems are trained on more than just how you look. They're also trained on how you act. They know the speed of your walk. They know the emotions. They can approximate your emotions based on your facial expressions. They can approximate your political stance based on the conversations you've had in public. And all of a sudden, like, we're kind of known by this entity in as much as God knows us more intimately. He knows us more truly. But this entity that we're coming up against, which I've called the beast, this super intelligent system, it knows us for our worst parts and our public facing parts. And the people who control it and guide it will have all the ammunition they need. I mean, just think about it. Just think about it. No one is righteous, not even one. If you take that verse to its full understanding, no one could have the entirety of their life displayed in front of them without them being completely embarrassed by it. Because we've all made grave mistakes. And here you have a system that can potentially record everything, potentially bring it back. And whoever is running the narrative of morality will then have all the ammunition they need. There was a quote from, I believe it was Stalin's right-hand man, who said, "Show me the man and I will show you the crime." That's what he used to say. Show me the man and I will show you the crime. The government has the potential to convict people of any little thing. And that's actually the problem that I have right now. As much as I love our country, I love what we've stood for over the years, I see a real issue happening on both sides of the aisle, friends, with the weaponization of the powers of government against the people of that same government and the people of that same country. It's a real problem because you have people who could probably convict someone of anything, lock them away for good. But, would they subject themselves to that same level of scrutiny? Probably not. Would they turn the keys over of that surveillance system that's been watching their lives? Probably not. And so there is a bit of a hypocrisy to that. Whoever holds the keys to the system holds the power. And I've seen some Christian voices just talking and adding some rightful concern about, hey, let's say the Republicans are using these tools poorly, how will the Democrats use them if and when they return to power? It's a very, very important question. We need to be sure that with the way we're using all the tools stays the way God intends. And unfortunately, I think we will have global powers that rise up within our lifetime that probably do away with a lot of the national powers, at least turning them more into puppets than rulers. I know that there's already been some people talking about that, how national sovereignty is under attack by global superpowers. And yeah, I think they have some reason to have those thoughts. But we, the people, right, are still a factor, and a big factor at that. So anyway, don't give up your rights to privacy. Don't give up the rights of your church to privacy. Consider if it's wise to have all spaces subject to that type of surveillance. I'm serious. What spaces exist in your life where you can say what you really think? I'm serious. Think about it. I already am under some attack, even on my own platforms, for saying what I really think. So just consider it. Okay, last one. AI content. Well, you may have seen lately the Sora platform has taken off, and it's almost indistinguishable from reality in a way that previous video generators have not been. Sora is a video generating tool where people can type in something and it creates a video of that. Whew. I have been shocked by the lifelikeness, even down to chest rise and fall, where like it's simulating somebody breathing. I mean, bro, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. AI content does something to the world that is irreparable. And we may need the new systems I was alluding to, these systems of connecting and documenting and sharing. We may need those systems earlier than I would have thought, just because AI systems are so damaging to human trust. Let's say that someone passes off an AI bit of content as though it was real, and that content is later, it's trusted at first, but then later it's turned out it's false. What does that do to damage the human connection and the trust between those parties? Someone at the conference I was at gave this example. He said, let's say you bought a Bible off the shelf, new translation, and then you found out it was actually all AI translated. How would you feel? And I think the whole room, like you could hear a pin drop. No one was comfortable with that question. So we have to prioritize trust and authenticity. We have to prioritize things that can be verified to be true, or we lose the basis of communication. What happens when you have only AI narrators of your videos? What happens when you have videos and content that is only AI generated? My wife said, maybe in some years, actually my brother said, maybe in some years you'll only have one actor in a film and everybody else, all the supporting actors, all the other stuff will all just be AI. I had to think about that for a long time. But it's more than just the actors that have a lot to lose. It's not just the people who are using the platforms like influencers or YouTubers who have a lot to lose. It's you and me. It's the people who are wanting to find ways to connect and trust. Humans are great at creating meaning. But when the tools that we have used to create meaning become meaningless, then we've lost a key part of what it means to be in community with other people. Because creating meaning is something we do together. It's something we do as a group. It's something we do through our likes, our shares, our comments. We create meaning around things that matter. So what's the meaning that we create around AI content? What's the damage that's done? There's for the first time in the last week, there was a AI artist who made the Billboard. I can't remember if it was top 100 songs. I think it was. And kind of brought this whole ethical question up, like, why should anyone even go into music? I remember this 60 Minutes correspondent went to Nashville and he was talking to somebody who had the most powerful tools to use music, to create music with AI. And they actually made a little demo song live. That song ended up going viral on YouTube. And the 60 Minutes correspondent went back on YouTube about a week later and said that this presents a very grave threat to the industry, because why would somebody go and try to compete against a system that has approximated and condensed and simplified 900 years of music, even thousands of years of human music, and taken out what is the best music have in common over 2,000 years, and then boom, create music that just sounds like incredible to the human ear. Why would somebody willingly compete against that? That's the problem that we have with AI content. It's the more we introduce, the more we accept, the more we build our meaning around it, the less we are real to ourselves and the less we are creating meaning in those domains. The meaning comes from humans and it goes into the places. The robot can't create meaning. It can only create a semblance of something it's been taught before. So, yeah, I think we have room for caution. I was talking with a couple AI ethicists that I really respect, and basically the conclusion we came to together when it comes to should I use generative AI, the conclusion was no. We shouldn't. AI should not be in the position of drafting something or creating something that we then take and distribute. If anything, it should be in the place of automating routine tasks, simplifying our life, and enabling us to be the creators of the meaning. The problem that I see, though, with this, especially within music and video and stuff, is we see a few artists that are probably white labeling AI stuff as theirs. What I mean by that is they've gone to AI and they say, write me a good poem or a good lyric for this type of song, and then they take that lyric or they take that melody and they voice it themselves. They actually take that same output and they're the human voice of it. It's white labeling something that isn't theirs, and that's intellectual theft. It's plagiarism at best, but at worst, it's degrading the trust of every single person in the industry. So, big issues I see ahead. Even, I know the issue's already been brought up, but pastors using AI to write their sermons. And then they white label it. They'll tweak just enough where it's kind of theirs, kind of. Musicians tweaking the music just enough where it's kind of theirs. Like Seth drums. He's like takes an AI song and he plays the drums. So it wasn't really Seth's music, was it? I mean, he added the stamp to the envelope. Troubling. Very troubling. So, what do you stamp your name next to? And is it something real? Is it something authentic? And I think there will be a need for authenticity. And I think there will be a need for some kind of verification of authenticity. Or we're going to run aground. Like, who wants to buy a book when an unknown portion of all the books out there are written by AI? Who wants to buy an album when an unknown amount of that music was not made by a human? And we are going to have a subcategory of our population that says, who cares? And we're going to have a subcategory of our population who says, I care a lot. And then there's going to be a lot of people who are in between. But I'm telling you right now that I'm on the side of I care a lot about source. I care a lot about inspiration and where something came from. And so I hope that we can get to somewhere good as a society relating to that. So, yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. I realize this is a long format video. Some of these hot takes are probably not bared by some of my closest friends. If you watch this video even on 2 times, maybe just let me know. I would be curious to know kind of just even who's still watching. But I am thankful for the handful of people who will send me their thoughts about AI, and we can have an ongoing discussion. And maybe you can illuminate the people in my sphere and me, and maybe I can illuminate you a little bit, and we can shed some light on the issues. Speaking of light, that's a good way to end this video. Light has shone in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So even though there's a clash in our time between light and dark, you don't need to be afraid, don't need to be worried. The darkness loses that one. So just keep fighting the good fight of faith, and keep holding on to the light. Remember that you are the light of the world, Jesus said. If you have the gospel in your heart, you have the light of Christ. That light shines through this darkness, and it will not overcome it. And that light will enlighten other people so that they can see the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's my hope for you, friends. That's my hope for me and my family as well, is that we can continue to be the difference and be the Jesus difference that the world really needs right now. All right. Take care. God bless you. And if there's something you want me to address in a special video, just send me a link to an article or let me know, and I'd be happy to keep the conversation going. Take care.